What's up, everyone? I'm Shadeen, and welcome to another episode of OUTPour. So on this show, we are talking everything LGBTQ, pop culture, and social justice. On this episode, we have a very important topic to cover. Trump.
Boo! Oh my God.
Woo! Dump the Trump.
Before we dive into what I'm sure is going to be a really high energy conversation, let's check in with special correspondent Big Daddy Rob.
When you're next to me.
So, to my understanding, you've helped a district attorney get elected, but then you also, in turn, protested said district attorney. Most people call you hypocritical or a hypocrite or some type of agitator. How do you respond to that? What would you see that behavior as?
Well, my first and foremost, my loyalty is to my community. Everything that I do is for my community to make sure that we have a platform and we have access to politicians and keep them at their word. When I endorsed Larry Krasner, I endorsed Larry because I consider Larry a friend. I endorsed Larry because he had character, and I knew personally he had character, and I knew the progressive platform that he had. And he lived that platform. He was a defense attorney, defended many of us in Black Lives Matter, and many others in ACT UP was he defended. So he had a long list of civil rights advocacy and progressive ideas. So I endorsed him because I believed in the message and I believed in the man. But that being said, once he was sworn in, as the district attorney, he ceased to be the candidate Larry Krasner, and now he's the district attorney. Mm-hmm. So now you are in the same boat as any other politician. And because you're the district attorney, we have several cases that we need to highlight, and we need answers in, and we want justice. We want justice for David Jones. We want justice for Dennis Bowden Jr. We want justice for Niza Morris, a trans woman of color who was last seen with the 6th District police officers. We want all the information out about that case. We don't 15 years. We need every evidence. We need all the phone calls. We need all the paperwork. We want to know what happened to our dear sister. My cousin Brandon Tate Brown, who was murdered, shot in the back of the head December 15th, 2004. We want those police officers, based on the new evidence that have come forward and the fact that they lied on their report, we want that case re-examined. We want it opened up again. We want justice for Brandon Tate Brown and many others. So now that you are the district attorney, and that goes not only for Larry, that goes for the mayor, that goes for the city council members, that goes for the state rep, that goes for the governor. If I ran for office, it would go for me. You know, no one is above reproach. Everybody is going to get it when the hammer drops. And so we want transparency. We want these individuals who are now in power to do their job. I think Larry's doing a great job based on what, going into that snake pit. He's doing an excellent job. But again, we are going to hold everyone accountable, even if I endorsed you.
And I think that's what people fail to realize, that these elected officials have a responsibility, and they should be held accountable for things that go on within their community and their districts.
Absolutely.
When you're next to me.
What does it say about this country now that we have a president that would remove words from the CDC?
I think it says a lot that Donald Trump is the president of the United States right now in itself. Absolutely. I think that that's a statement in itself that I don't know if our country is sending a message or what's going on with that, but I think just him and being a president, just because I feel like so many people didn't think that Donald Trump would even be the president.
A joke.
And that's, and me, myself included, I did not even think that, he would actually seriously make it to the point that he would become and be currently right now my president, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that you cannot have a president like Donald Trump without a President Obama, though. President Obama is like the antagonist of President Trump. Like they're two different sides of the spectrum. And, you know, people, like I said, people forget how bad it was when Bush was president. And I never thought in my 38 years on this earth, I'd say I want a President Bush. I want, give me Bush Senior or Junior right now. Just don't give me Trump.
Listen.
And, you know, as a black man, I never thought I would hear myself say that. But, I mean, this president has absolutely no integrity to anything. Like, I mean, you don't even have integrity to your own children and your own family. So if you don't have integrity to them, you know, you damn sure enough ain't gonna care about me.
Well, I think that says, you know, a lot about the seriousness of our country and, you know, taking voting more seriously. Yeah, of course, we all like, oh, Trump, please, he will never be a president. And then the nightmare happened. I literally thought I was dreaming. I was like, oh, this can't be true. I'm watching TV. I'm like, this can't be true.
No, seriously, like, am I asleep? Am I dreaming right now? Like, election night, sitting in that rocking chair with a glass of wine. Like, what?
I know I dozed off. I'm like, am I still asleep?
Did all of you watch?
Yes. I remember waking up with anxiety. I remember going into the office and seeing this collective trauma amongst all of my colleagues.
The next day.
Yeah, and it was like, and it's so weird because I know there were probably folks in the office who may have voted for Trump or may have liked Trump, and that's okay too. But I really felt like, you know, it was just like, what the fuck did just happen?
I couldn't believe that there were so many blatant, disrespectful things that came out of the mouth of the person who was elected to be the president. Like for me, like there were just so many things throughout the campaign that I feel like were just like, what? Like this is, or like seriously, this is the person, like the way that he would like talk to people, the way that he would just like come at people, the way that he would talk about certain populations. It's like you do realize that you are the president of the United States of America. That includes everyone, regardless if their skin complexion or they're the same race as you are not. Like you still are the president, so you're supposed to be the president of everyone and not just a certain small group of people that you're trying to maintain power for and with.
I think, you know, by him becoming president, it has allowed other people to be more blatantly disrespectful about racism. And show, not that it was, you know, people that weren't racist, but they were there was exercising it more. Like,
and not just racism. I feel like with people with disabilities, for people who are trans, for people who are gay, I feel like just so many populations, and that's the biggest thing. It wasn't just one population. It wasn't just the blacks that he disenfranched. There were so many populations that's just like how is this happening?
Racist. It's like across the board. Like how can you really offend so many people?
It's really disappointing and disgusting.
Yeah, I find it amazing that we held Billy Bush to a higher standard than President Trump. We held Matt Lauer to a higher standard than we did the President of the United States. We have held so many other folks. We held Bill Cosby to a higher standard than we have Donald Trump.
What does this mean for queer and trans communities to have this particular person in office?
Well, for me, I like to tell a lot of LGBT folks in general, not just LGBT folks of color, that they have no idea how much the Obama administration really did for LGBT folks in general. If you look back some of the policies that were put in place by the Bush administration, you know, before Obama became president, it was horrendous. It was really like some self-hate going on. However, now, you know, all of that could be rolled back, you know, and I don't think people understand the importance of the judicial branch of government. I mean, it's a silent, deadly killer. The judicial branch. You know, I think we see the legislation and the executive branch. We see all of those working movements because you got C-SPAN, CNN, Fox News. So we see those moving parts. But laying, you know, in the dust is the Supreme Court, those federal judges, those appellate court judges, and those are the ones who, you know, enforce and uphold the law. And people don't see that a lot of times.
And you know what's interesting for me as an LGBT person living under the Trump administration? I feel that, and since the very beginning of this presidency, I have felt that I have to be visible. I have like a newfound, like I have to be visible. I have to be more active. I have to be more present in my communities and doing more things to contribute because I feel some ownership of the entire situation. And I had to ask myself questions like, okay, is there more I could have done? And not only that, is okay, what can I do now? What are some things that I can do now since the very beginning of this presidency? I've even noticed, for example, some of the first things where the White House was starting to delete some of the official pages of like the LGBT community. So they had like home pages on the White House. And they were just completely like, this page is no longer found.
That's right.
Like as if you can just delete people, as if you can erase our lives and our existence as if we don't matter.
Well, that's his agenda.
That's how I feel personally. And which is like, what the fuck? I was born here, and not only that, but I'm living in my truth. This is who I am. Like, how dare you just, go off of, you don't even know what it's like to live my life or be in my shoes, and you're just judging me and based off of what?
Well, I feel like that's his agenda specifically, to eradicate everything that the Obama administration has stood for, has put in place for not only LGBT people, Shadeen, but also people of color, people of Hispanic, race, for all people. I believe Obama was a man for all people, and you have somebody like Trump to eradicate everything he has done.
Or to attempt to, not everything, but damn sure a lot of it.
Attempt.
They've rolled back a lot, and silently too, and secretly. They've been not
when everybody's sleeping,
but silently.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I just don't think Trump is a man of integrity. I don't always think that, like, when you look at past presidents, I honestly believe they really thought that what they were doing was in the best interest of the country, so that kind of gave them a level of integrity. I agree. I don't think, a lot of folks didn't agree with Bush. A lot of folks didn't really agree with Reagan and C. Bush Sr. or Clinton. But I think everybody felt like it was done in some sense of integrity. I don't think we have that now. So even if I didn't agree with what Bush policies were, I didn't, question the man's integrity behind it, because I felt like, he did it because he felt like this was his best move. Everybody doesn't agree with the decisions I make for my life, but I don't think this man operates on any sense of integrity. I think he operates on what, is best for him.
Exactly, he's self-serving, and it's like super blatant. Like when you're setting up business deals, when you have your whole family entrenched and entangled in the White House, and you're setting up future business deals so that you can monopolize off of it, and
nepotism at its finest. Nepotism at its finest. You can't get any funner than that.
So the two of you brought up erasure and silencing. For me, that has to bring up immigration. Right? Where in the same way that entire community pages were gone, also entire visa classes are up on the chopping block. And when we're speaking about communities of color and queer communities of color, there are a lot of folks who immigrate to this country for a variety of reasons, right? As you all know, I'm one of them. I'm your resident Canadian, right? What does that mean that we have so much trauma and confusion around immigration in this country now?
I think that when we just in general with immigration, we are a nation built on immigrants, except for African Americans who were brought here unwillingly, and the Native Americans. Everyone else here is an immigrant, and when people say, like that nationalism, make America great again, or keep them out, it symbolizes to me, that great white privilege, that some Americans have, and they forget. They really do forget, and it's heart-wrenching, it's sad, but I don't really know how to combat that,
Go ahead.
I just feel like, for me, I feel like people got to put their money where their mouth is. And in some ways, I feel like that's what the Trump administration is attempting to do. So especially when I think about immigration, I think of the fact that they're trying to delegate billions of dollars to build a border wall that is not going to really do much. Like,
while defunding services like Planned Parenthood.
What the fuck? And that's what I'm saying. Like, you're allocating money and taking money from one thing to put it on to something to send a message, to do what? To me, that I just think it's beyond, it's ridiculous.
Of course he wants to
crazy.
send a message out. And clearly he's and it's working for some of the stuff that he's trying to do.
But we have to mobilize. We have the numbers to be able to I feel like to outnumber that shit. If we show up and we actually vote and we actually participate in our democracy, is what it's supposed to be. I'm not even how it's supposed to be, because I do have faith in our democracy. But if we're going to actually truly be in a democracy, then I feel like, you know, we have to be able to uplift our communities to actually to be active.
Tony, what's the message that you feel like this legislation is putting forth? And also, what do we think we need to do to counter that message?
I think the message that's currently being sent out is a very matter-of-fact message. Very, I matter, you don't. It doesn't, everything else does not matter. We got the whole Black Lives Movement as a result of Trump being president, whether you realize it or not. That whole movement came out of this pompous, this individual who was serving in the White House. What can we do? Now, I'm just going to say this. If we voted more, like we did with the Obama administration, we probably wouldn't be in this predicament. But nobody took him seriously. So I know for damn sure when we go out for next election season that, you know, we might show up more.
I think it's you know, a little bit deeper. I understand what you're saying. But I even think it goes even a level deeper when you're talking about Trump. So last winter, I had a chance to go visit in the Poconos, rural Pennsylvania, right? I'm in this town, really small town, and you know, I'm with 3 other black guys. We walk into this supermarket, and we're like, oh, this is really small. This is a small town. There's nothing here. Nothing. There's nothing there. There's no jobs. The best job was the manager at the supermarket. So they see these black men coming in here. We all well dressed, of course. And they're like, and I could see this resentment on their faces. I mean, and I was like, this is how Trump got elected. This is it right here. I don't feel like I'm on equal footing, or they're taking food out of our mouths. You know, so you have these rural, small pockets in the country who really do feel left behind. And, you know, I didn't really get it at first, but when I went into that small town in Pennsylvania, I was like, oh, okay. Not saying that I agreed with it, but I feel like he was able to speak to that. He was able to speak to that resentment.
We also can't miss that it was middle-class white women that voted in Trump.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, as we think about mobilization and some of the movements that have come out of this presidency, is there any good side? Has there been any silver lining?
Oh, yes. Yes. I think, you know, people didn't pay attention so much with Obama because they felt safe. When people feel safe, we stop paying attention. We let our guard down. We're like, okay, it's good, blah, blah, blah. But now I feel like with Trump, I mean, you got people who have never paid attention to politics. You got people who have people who never voted are voting. People are really understanding the importance of the black vote now. I mean, you saw that in last year in Mississippi, or was it Alabama? Was it Mississippi, Alabama? Ugh. It was one of those states where you saw what the black vote could do even in the Senate election.
Oh, I forget.
Yeah, I think it was Alabama. Yes, it was
Alabama.
Alabama.
I think
it
so.
was Alabama.
And that was shocking. I said yes.
But they saw how when black people mobilize, even in Alabama, when black people mobilize, look what can happen.
Yes. Yeah.
So you're saying the takeaway from that is, you know,
it motivates.
People have become more knowledgeable.
About the voting process. It has motivated. It has motivated the base. I do think the midterms, you know, with the midterms coming up, I think it's going to be, you know, Democratic slam dunk. But, you know, what will we get out of it, you know, in the end? You know, I feel like, okay, we might do well in the midterms, but then what happens after that? You know, what happens if the next president, what if he gets reelected? That is a possibility.
For me, I feel like what helps and what energizes and what helps to really mobilize our community is when Trump says things like, get them sons of bitches out of there when you're referring to athletes and just the way that he talks to people and say things. I think that kind of gets under people's skin, and it surely gets under mine to the point where it makes me want to like do something about it.
Yeah.
And I really hope it makes enough of us want to do something about it that we do actually get out and get active and go vote, and not just at the state level and not just every 4 years.
Yes.
You know what I
man
mean?
can do no wrong. Even when he says, "Oh, if I ever get in trouble or if somebody else gets in trouble, I'm going to pardon myself." Excuse me? Well,
But see, you know what? One thing I can tell you about the Trump administration, I think everybody in America has learned, is that when you are white, male, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
There are limits to that, though.
No.
There are two limits because he know at the same time there are some checks, and while he can do whatever he wants to an extent, he knows at the end of the day we on his ass.
Yeah.
And he can't just do anything.
But he's cashing in on his celebrity. That's how he got into that position, because he was cashing in on his celebrity. Let's not forget that. He didn't need campaign trails to get where he needed. His money brought him a lot of the places where he is now.
But think about it. At the end of the day, there was still a lot of money spent against him. I think in some ways on ad campaigns, there was more money spent against him.
Absolutely.
And still, he's the president. So it's not even just about the money. It ain't just the money.
I think, he just speaks to, because I never understood why people would vote against their own self-interest.
Yes.
Like, why are these people in rural America voting for a guy, first of all, who would never step foot in rural America? Secondly, he don't really care. He does not care. You are better off with the other 3 candidates.
I don't think he thought he was going to be president.
Hell no. But I can tell you this.
I don't think so either.
I don't think he thought he was going to be president, but he's damn sure enough happy he is. And now that he's here, he's going to make him, his children, his family, if they weren't set, they definitely going to be set after this.
I'm really hoping that people realize the implications of this presidency.
Oh,
I'm talking about like
absolutely.
right now to this day. For me, one of the biggest things is just kind of the rolling back and that has been happening with like the Affordable Care Act, for example. Like healthcare is just so important for so many people. And like the way that this law has been dismantled, like
So that goes back to a money concept
and start over, because like it's not even helping and doing what it was initially intended to do.
He doesn't care about that. It goes back to the money. Oh, if you got money, you got health care. First of all, this whole, Affordable Care Act for the people who do not have insurance, who do not have, the affordable health care.
Otherwise.
But look who doesn't have access to that. People in some of these rural towns who may not have access to, you mentioned, sometimes in some towns, Planned Parenthood is the only clinical institution, and they want to roll back that. So these are people who are voting not in their own self-interest, because, which I go back to, it is that resentment. It is that I need someone who will speak to my anger and someone to direct my anger. It's always the others. We are the others. We sit at this, round table as the others. There could be some people looking at it, look at these commie, queer, fags, shit. You know what I'm saying?
It's not speaking to it. It's already there.
Yeah,
He's pulling out. He's there saying, thank you. I really can vocalize how I feel now. It's like, thank you. Oh my God, we got somebody who really feels like me, who's really expressing how I feel.
I'm over Agent Orange. I'm over him. I'm sorry. I'm over him.
I mean, it even like the incident in South Carolina with the the young lady who got killed. It was good people on both sides. You know what I'm saying? When you say stuff like that, when you then perpetuate this narrative that there's reverse racism, stuff like that, it just again it speaks to those people who don't feel like they had a voice. That's why I said President Trump's election is such a referendum on the Obama being president. You can't get a President Trump without an Obama. Obama, was on one side of the spectrum, and people saw that as the browning of the country, and they needed something to feel safer.
So can we make America great finally? Like,
first of all, what does that even mean? Make America great again?
Can we make it great finally? Like for once?
So many communities are banding together, often out of fear.
Yes.
but very much out of a desperate desire to really feel like a community again. We see it in social justice movements like marches. We see it on Twitter in the hashtags, right? That we're doing a lot to try and reclaim some of the peace and the safety that we had really been hoping for every time election season comes around. So thank you all so much for your passionate opinions. So as always, we want to thank you for the outpour of love and support. See you next week.
Now, I really hope we show up next time. I'm serious, because we can't have this president. We can't have him.
But it